Hey everybody, my name is Daniel Fusco, and welcome to Bite Size Bible, where we take a bite-sized section of the Bible, Scripture, and we break it open to teach us about what does it mean about who God is and about who we are, about how we should move our way through the world. Today we're going to be looking at James chapter 2, verses 14 to 26, that second half of James chapter 2. And really, this section of Scripture is really the big idea of the book of James, where James is really wanting to unpack what faith really is, which is a faith that impacts the way that we live our lives in real time, where the rubber meets the road at street level. James is going to point us to the fact that true saving faith actually works. There is a lifestyle change that is associated with the very faith that we have. And so I'm really excited to get into it with you today. So let's pick up James chapter 2 in verse 14. It says, "What does it profit, my brethren, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can faith save him? If a brother or sister is naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you says to them, 'Depart in peace and be warmed and filled,' but you do not give them the things which are needed for the body, what does it profit? Thus also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead." Now, really what we see here is James is saying, don't let faith stand alone. Really the word that he keeps using here is profit, and you think about something where a profit is made, there is some fruit that is born because of what it is. And really what James is saying here is he's saying that if someone says they have faith, but their life is not changed, can that kind of a faith, a workless faith, really save a person? And then James uses a simple example of charity. Somebody who doesn't have any clothes, doesn't have any food, and they come to a believer and they say, "Listen, I don't have any food." And they say, "Oh man, listen, be warmed, be filled, go in peace." He's saying, listen, does that actually help them at all? And so really what James is saying here is we don't want faith to stand alone, that real biblical faith has works that actually prove out the faith that we have, and that real biblical faith should bring benefit or profit to others in the world. Now, of course, you know that when you start thinking about fruit, Jesus said that by this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, and so you'll be my disciples. Well, I always like to remind people that fruit that is born by a tree is never for that tree, it's for others. And so God is glorified when we bear the fruit of his Spirit, and that is a benefit or profit to others. So we have to make sure that our faith isn't divorced from work. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more in the next section about how the Apostle Paul is talking about faith and how James, and what do we do with what seems to be an argument that they might be having with one another. But I like to say it this way, it's not about faith or works or faith and works. Really, saving biblical faith is a faith that works. So there's a question that's going to come on up about this idea of faith standing alone or bringing profit. Don't let it stand alone. So in that question, if you're in a community group, you're going to discuss it together. And if you're on your own, take some time to meditate on this question. Maybe grab a journal and write along to see what God may have for us. And I'll be right back with you.
How does my faith lack the necessary works? What are 3 examples of practical faith steps you can take this week?
Now, picking up again in verse 17, James says, "Thus also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. But someone will say, 'You have faith and I have works. Show me your faith without your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. You believe that there is one God. You do well. Even the demons believe and tremble. But do you want to know, O foolish man, that faith without works is dead?'" Now, really what we see here, and James says it really succinctly, that we should show our faith by our works. See, really what James is getting into now is he's saying that there's a type of faith where I believe in God, but my life is not changed, that he's now calling a dead faith. He's already said it doesn't save. And then he also says in verse 19, "You believe that there is one God, you do well. Even the demons believe and tremble." See, he's saying that demons have faith, but because they believe that there's only one God, but they're actually not following that God. And so this idea of a faith that doesn't correspond now to actions lived in the real world that show their faith is actually, not only is it not saving or dead, it's also now demonic, which is kind of a powerful thing. So the question then becomes for each one of us is, do we have a faith that we show people what we believe by the way that we live? Now, remember I said, some of you read the Bible and you realize, wait, hold on. Doesn't the Apostle Paul say that we're saved by faith apart from works? And you get that from Ephesians chapter 2, for by grace you have been saved through faith. And it's not of yourself, it's the gift of God. It's not of works, lest anyone should boast. That's Ephesians 2, verses 8 and 9. And so what Paul is fighting against is legalism. This idea that my works, I get into heaven because of my works, because I do this and now God owes me heaven. That's legalism. But James is fighting against a superficial faith, a faith that says, I believe this stuff, but it's actually not changing the way that I live in real time. And that's why James keeps saying over and over again that faith without works is dead. And really the whole point of James's letter is to say, this is what a biblically saving faith, a faith that works, looks like in all these different areas of life. So there's another question coming on up, and you're going to discuss it in your group, or if you're on your own, listen, don't just skip over this. This is an opportunity for you to go a little bit deeper than you were before. Go ahead.
How can I show my faith by my works? What is the essential work God is calling you to do? Take time to pray and seek wise counsel if you don't have an answer.
Now, in this final section of the end of James chapter 2, picking up in verse 21, this is what James says. He says, was not Abraham our father justified by works when he offered Isaac his son on the altar? Do you see that faith was working together with his works, and by works faith was made perfect? And the scripture was fulfilled, which says, Abraham believed God, and it was accounted to him for righteousness, and he was called the friend of God. You see then that a man is justified by works and not by faith only. Likewise, was not Rahab the harlot also justified by works when she received the messengers and sent them away another way? For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also. Really what we learn is we have to learn from the past. And James picks up two Old Testament characters, Abraham and Rahab, to explain that really you see their faith by their works. First, he picks up Abraham, how Abraham was justified by his faith, and you saw his justifying faith by the works that he did. And they're really talking about what had gone on with his son Isaac, when God had said, hey, listen, I want you to sacrifice your son Isaac. And Abraham believed God, and it was accounted to him for righteousness. But we know that he believed God because he actually put feet on it and walked it out. It wasn't God's intention for Abraham to kill Isaac, but he did end up in that hall of faith in Hebrews 11 simply because he believed that even if he did kill Isaac, God was going to resurrect him from the dead because Isaac was the son of promise. How insane is that? Now, in the same way, Rahab ended up in the hall of faith. Remember her from the story in the book of Joshua, the destruction of the city of Jericho? They sent in those two spies, and Rahab hid the spies, even putting herself in harm's way for doing it. And ultimately she was saved. But you knew she believed in God because of her hiding of the spies and asking for them to help her when this destruction was coming on the city. So both times you're seeing this idea that faith is working together with works, and really faith comes to its completion, its perfection in real time, in real concrete action. And the beauty here is that real saving faith is not divorced from works. It's a faith that works. And we really see our faith by the works that we do. So there's one more question coming up in your groups. Talk about it on your own. I'll be right back with you.
What biblical lessons is Jesus trying to teach you? Who do you need to invite into that process? Friends, family, church family?
This is kind of a powerful section, isn't it? James chapter 2, verses 14 to 26. And it does take some nuance, because if you start looking at Paul's writing, we're saved by faith apart from works, he's fighting legalism, James fighting superficiality. If we're too quick and we don't think about it, we end up missing out on exactly what God has. So we want to let the scriptures deepen us in understanding who God is, and what he would have for us. But here's what I want to tell you. True saving faith works. So let's put feet on our faith and walk it out every single day. So my name is Daniel. Thanks for joining me on Bite Size Bible. God bless.